personal Periscope tomorrow, so none for you, but some for you tomorrow. We're going to tackle a couple non-DFS related topics, but today we're going to talk about my favorite time of the year as both a tout and a player was NBA preseason DFS. It didn't exist when I was a player, but if I were a player, I would crush a lot. But it's been silly successful for the last couple of years. And I guess we'll get into the other thing first, because the last couple shows we've talked a lot about sort of inherent mathematical sense. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she'll be doing math, and a problem will come up, and it'll say, what's 30% of 13,155.55? And she'll screw up the decimal point, and she'll say the answer is 40. And I'll be like, all right, well, you should just kind of know that isn't true. You know, like 30% is about a third. And if you started with like 13,000, you should end with like 4,000 and something. So clearly you got the decimal place off a couple points. I'll handle that question in a second. That's a good question. And so there's this guy on Twitter who makes all sorts of ridiculous claims. And, you know, I don't... There are lots of people who are braggadocious on Twitter. That's fine. That's apparently the thing to do. You should just make stuff up. And there are people with a... Did I lose you? Whoa. Call tried to come in on the phone there. So there are plenty of people on the Twitter who, you know, run their mouth, which is great. And again, if your accomplishments are roughly proportional with your bravado, works out just fine. And so this guy's making all sorts of crazy claims, and the last one that got me and a few other people interested is where he claimed that he was playing, you know, lots of MLB DFS every day, and that on the season he had cashed 91% of his contests. And that was the first thing that made me sure that he wasn't probably even decent at DFS. To that point, I thought there was a chance maybe he's really good. DFS, as we've discussed at length, is really hard these days. You know, in a given month, you look at DraftKings public figures, and they got, you know, 12% of people are profitable for the month. You extrapolate that over a number of months, you're down like 5% of people are making any money. Maybe this guy's a break-even player, which is pretty good these days. Maybe he's making a little money. That's very possible. Just because he acts like he's the best in the universe, I'm sure he's not that, but he could be very solid. But the first thing that made it clear that he probably is terrible at it is the fact that he doesn't understand basic math enough to lie within the proportions of reason. You know what I'm saying? I ran a quick search on the old numbers where I used to work at Fantasy Feud that were easily accessible. It showed that the highest profit percentage for someone who played an average of at least 5 contests a day for the entire season in the history of the site, which was 5 years, was one guy managed to pull down 68% one year, which is incredible. That's really well done for someone who was in 800 and something contests. That's incredibly good work. Bravo to you, sir. 91% is like me saying I'm 11 feet tall or something. But no, what I'm saying is, to the point that he told that really stupid lie, I thought there was a very good chance that he could be fine. There were a lot of people who defended this guy. Now, they should have known better, because he's obviously talking out of his ass, but there's a chance he's giving good DFS advice. I didn't want to take that away from him. I don't know him. I've never read his whatever. But no, I'm cashing 91% of my contests on the baseball season 5 months into it. Yeah, that's that. So, that's the learning to lie with some sort of reasonable aplomb. You know, and it would be very hard for me to imagine that someone who thinks the lie of 91% is something he could possibly sell to someone of vague intelligence, that guy is in reasonable shape. You talk to, like, you know, Vegas bettors or something, if you're pulling in like 60%, and that's all head-to-head, you might be talking GRTs and stuff. The Red Roofer in has always been amazing. How you doing, Matt Draven Knight? So anyhow, so today I didn't get as much prep work as I'd like to. I usually end up working 8 to 5, but I work with a couple teams, one of which is in Kiev and the other which is in Vancouver. So the hours of the day get stressed out a little bit. And so didn't get a couple extra hours I wanted today to flesh this out, so I'll be going off the cuff a little bit here. But this is the general preseason NBA primer. I want to talk about, you know, what it is exactly, explain how good it has been, which is a little difficult to quantify, but would hate to fall into lying and aggrandizing numbers, so I'll tell you what I do know. You know, what's coming up, why it's so good, and what you can best do to profit from it. The first, of course, would be play in it. Anyhow, may you all have interesting jobs, by the way. Never be afraid to seek out a better job. I've been lucky to have a you know, career in sports and theater and game design, and of course my first job as a male escort. But you know, you turn 35, 40 years old, you got some money in the bank, by all means, feel free to take a nice trip or buy yourself a nicer car, but consider spending some of that money to buy yourself a nicer life you don't hate. And I always worry when I say that I'm coming across blindly or aloof, and someone's sitting there thinking, you know, hey, Ed, my family was poor, and we didn't come from much, and I can't quit my job at Burger King because Kyle O'Quinn is not good. And every time I get $30, Ed, you make me waste it on Kyle O'Quinn. And so, I don't know. But I'm aware some people can't do that and will never have the opportunity. I'm reading comments from here and YouTube and Twitch. Actually, we're triple screaming here. So I accept many of you do not have the financial wherewithal to skip your next paycheck in interest of being a circus juggler. But many of you do, and most of those won't. Can qualify by the best 3 weeks of my DFS career last year. Paid for a nice little second honeymoon. So yeah, getting back on topic here, because most of you don't want to hear me bloviate on random things. Yeah, so the best 3-week stretch I've ever seen, and again, experientially as a tout, this is difficult to qualify. But you know when everyone's winning, and you know when everyone's losing. The second one you really know, because people crawl up your ass, and those people are really loud. And you have a bad day, and like you know, I'll do a show for 30, 60, or 90 minutes, and I'll talk about 30 players, and it'll come across that 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 of these guys are the guys I really love. And those guys will go badly, and you'll know when you fucked it, no matter how good any of these guys are. They occasionally just completely screw the pooch. That's going to happen. So you know when you do that. And you also know when you basically get it right. It's like, okay, we talked on the show for an hour, and I mentioned this guy the most, and this guy the second most, and this guy the third most, and they all absolutely dominated, and everyone in chat is talking about how they're making money. I think we're hitting this out of the park tonight. The best I ever saw was Summer League, those 17 days or whatever earlier this year. You know, again, you can look at, you know, DraftKings has all the public numbers. I imagine FanDuel is required to do the same thing by statute. And they're saying, you know, 11 to 13% of their players are winning every month or so. Over that 3-week period, I feel like, I don't know, 90% of the players on the FanVice team at that point, now most of whom the staff and many of the customers have come over to Awesemo.com, were profitable. Maybe 80? But I knew one person who said, no, I didn't make money. And you know, I'm in chat with other people going, how did you not make money? We won absolutely everything. You know, there were 16 or 17 nights of it. We won the biggest GPP 8 of those nights. And just everyone in chat was always, you know, falling over themselves to fillet me, which is pretty rare because most of the time they're falling all over each other to get to me with the axe. But that was the best period ever. The best before that was preseason last year, and someone in here just alluded to it. Everybody won, or many people won. Many times the 12%, I can tell you that. So, you know, during your average, and the best time before that would have been the preseason before that. So, you put Mountain Dew in your hair when I won big. I think you got that backwards. I put Mountain Dew in my hair at one point when someone else won big. But lots of people won big, lots of people won small, and I feel like the vast majority of people came out winners. And so, yeah, the number one thing is play. A lot of people aren't even necessarily inclined to play preseason. Yeah, October has been the month the last couple of years. Oh, God, names are so small there. Hey, Tyreek. How you doing, brother? Yeah, it's good. It's really good. It is worth your time. You should consider doing it. So why is it good? There's 2 main reasons why it's good. One is that there's less information out there, and the other one is that there is different. What happened when I got illegally picked? Did you almost throw? Oh, okay. It took me a minute. It took me an old basketball story. I ran into someone who absolutely knocked me on my ass on the basketball court, setting a pick. And I wanted to punch the guy. I don't know. It took me out of my game there. So I'm going to stay on topic, and then we can talk about random shit if you guys want. But so the first thing is that there's just a lot less information. During the NBA regular season, it's, you know, for the first half, arguably the second biggest sport on Earth, and for the second half and towards the end of the year, by far the biggest sport on the planet. There's just oodles and oodles of information, and there's 37 tout sites covering it, and if you join the right lists on Twitter, you have 100 talking heads talking about all the best things. There are less talking heads talking about less things, and they're not as good at it either. And I don't mean this to be rude or critical of the other DFS touts, but a lot of people who play DFS professionally all year and tout about DFS sort of have a standard procedure that they don't deviate that much from, and Summer League requires some deviation. So, long story short, there is less advice, and it's not as good. I should really know how much the NBA package is, and I have no idea. I promise I will know by the time we get to that point. We are 23 days from the preseason. I promise in no less than 22 days I'll know how much that package costs. But that's a fine question. But yeah, so there's the, you know, the talking heads that everyone's listening to aren't saying as much and aren't saying as much of value. And all right, so we'll get into how it's different, I guess, because again, I didn't have time to prep any of this because work got into me. Canadians. But, so let's, okay, so the number one thing is, coach, the lettuce does not look nice. And again, I don't like do anything out of it, I just get out of bed, but it's fluffy, but it's like bigger on this side than this side. It needs to get caught, but you're kind to say that. You're watching me in class on the first day of your senior year of college? Well, God bless you, I'll try to be more interesting than cultural anthropology. I'm just throwing a guess out there. So, yeah, so strategy. So the number one thing that makes a difference is you need to do a lot of looking at coaches, which is not, and this sort of conjoins with also scanning news even more intensely. And what that means is usually aggregators aggregate for you fairly well during the NBA regular season. You can go to a couple places and they will have everything you need. You really need to scrounge during the preseason. There is not one place that gives me all the information I want. I have, you know, TweetDeck going and another thing here and a couple sites I check here, but you really need to walk around and beat reporters is the number one thing on Twitter that you want to keep an eye on, but the news does not get aggregated very well. So you need to look a lot of different places, and this relays into coaches in the fact that a number of coaches just play guys more in the preseason. And I'm going to go and do an object example in a second here, which I didn't have time to prepare, so I'm going to type it in as we sit here, and hopefully everything will add up to what I expect to. But certain coaches just play guys more in the preseason, and certain coaches play guys more in the preseason and talk about it, and some they just do it every year. So, for example, Mike D'Antoni hasn't always been that guy, but we knew going into last year that he was going to play the Rockets a lot. He said, look, we only have 5 preseason games I think the Rockets had in 2017 and 18. I'm pretty sure I'm right, give or take a game. And I'm going to give my guys some real goddamn time. I want to see this and this and this and this and this. He made it pretty clear he was going to play his players. So the whole preseason, I was like, look, play Houston. The guys on Houston are going to play. The starters are going to get real goddamn time. And I'm going to go look this up in a second. I'm pretty sure the starters all got appreciable time relative to the rest of the field. The other one, there were like 3 teams we were looking at. The second one I want to say is Detroit. Stan Van Gundy has always been back through Orlando days, played his guys a lot in the preseason, just laid a little heavier on setting up the regular season rotations, didn't go as deep into the bench. The Lakers did it. But they're just either through looking at their previous tendencies. You can find coaches who play guys a ton of minutes, and you can also find coaches who play guys a shit number of minutes. Oh, this is great. This makes a great example. So I'm going to look this up. But Detroit, if someone's not, there were 2 teams who only had 4 preseason games. Timberwolves had 4, 2 of which were in China. So they had, and I want to say the other 2 were on the road. Ugh. They played like the Lakers and the Warriors in China or something like that. And then but they had almost no preseason. I felt legit bad for them. And you got to travel 10,000 miles a couple times. Like that was not good times for the Timberwolves. And so that was just weird. But the weird times basically kept them off slates. It was almost like they didn't exist for preseason last year. But Detroit is, I think, the great example we're going to look at here is they all got significant appreciable time last year, and they're going to get far less this year because they got Dwayne Casey'd, And DW don't play that whole given preseason guys minutes shindig. So let me get in here, fire up a window. For stats like this, you can use NBA.com. They have it. They have hoop stats. I'm going to go to realgm.com, who does very good with preseason. You can get to all they're one of the sites that gets looked at less. And so shout out to RealGM, which has stuff. So we're going to search. I'm going to say show me for the 2017-2018 all teams preseason only. Okay, and then I can search by minutes per game. And it gets everyone. Yes, and it'll only give me 100 per page. But that's fine. So I've got now everyone in the league. Oh, okay. Okay, so it includes the Chinese team. So I have someone from Shanghai on top, and then GLL is the second team, which is the Guangdong Long Lions, I think, of the CBA. Okay, so, but I'm going to go down this list, ignore Chinese players, and just look at NBA players proper, and I'm only going to count players who played at least 2 games, because a lot of these guys have ones next to their name, and they might have come up for a day or something. That's a good question. We'll get there in just a second, but I want to go down my list here. So the number 1 player, the most minutes per game in the preseason last year was, who played at least 2 games. Andre Drummond, who played 32.9 minutes, of Detroit. We'll come back to that. But I'm willing to take the under on, he's going to lose, I'm going to say they play him 24 minutes a game this preseason. So someone who's just looking apples to apples at last game's preseason. Number 2, James Harden, played 31.9. You don't like me. That's fair. You don't know me that well, but that might just make it worse. So James Harden was number 2. Paul George was number 3. I wouldn't have thought of that one. China, MAC, that's Maccabi Haifa. That's the Israeli team that got in there and played, I want to say, the Jazz and a couple other teams. Number 4, Trevor Ariza of Houston. Number 5, Lonzo Ball. Number 6, Malik Monk. They gave him a lot of time. Number 7, Tobias Harris of Detroit. Number 8, Avery Bradley of Detroit. Your guess was Harden number 1. He was number 2. And then Justin Holiday, Josh Jackson, so was Chicago of Phoenix. And then Chris Paul, even though he's an old-ass man, was in there. And so on and so forth. So, and then another Phoenix. And then Devin Booker of Phoenix, obviously. And then Stanley Johnson. And then, so, and again, the lower these numbers get, the more relevant these ratios are. Now, I didn't hit anyone on Toronto there yet. You know, and I was down to 28 minutes there. I'll take 24 minutes a game. Maybe 25 is the most anyone on Toronto got. Let's find the top Toronto player in minutes per game last year's preseason. Obviously, Norman Powell, 24.4 minutes. Led the Raptors in preseason minutes per game last year. That's not good. That doesn't make Toronto unplayable, but really effing close. The expensive guys on Toronto, I don't know how good you think DeRozan's going to do or Lowry's going to do, but 21 minutes of them is not going to be as good as 31 minutes of, you know, Trevor Ariza even. Like, for the same price, I'll take an extra 50% time there. Yeah, that was the top guy for Toronto. I bet they weren't even the bottom team. So we're going to get into this. I'm going to break this down. I'm going to do probably 6 podcasts, 5 teams each, maybe break down by division, conference, maybe, I don't know. But I'm going to, the last 10 days or so before we get there, I'm going to do a show every other day and break down 6 teams, talk about the players, talk about the coaches. This is what we can expect. I don't know what percentage of my shows once the preseason starts will be behind the paywall. I feel confident in speculating it'll be between 0 and 100. So I'll do it all for you on those days too, but if you are, you're not following me behind the paywall at theawesemo.com, then DeRozan is on the Spurs. Yes, DeRozan is now on the Spurs. I did know that one. I forgot about the Alex Len trade, or never saw the Alex Len trade, but I'm aware of the Kawhi Leonard DeMar DeRozan trade. But I was referring to last year, if you wanted to play Lowry or play DeRozan instead, I would rather play the Harden or the Ariza getting the 31 minutes. But yes, I take your point. When will you do Philly? I don't know. I'll announce them ahead of time, probably towards the beginning, because I know most of what I need to know there. Am I high on Philly? Well, their conference got a lot easier. They're one of 3 teams I think have a good chance to take home the East. I still think I will take the Celtics. but I mean, obviously that team is incredibly young and incredibly talented and has a lot to grow. So, you know, Philly is great to watch. So, but yeah, I have to take Boston. All shows are free right now. There is not currently a paywall at awesemo.com. Again, we've talked about this before. The economy of work on all the various. I've been a player. I've been on tout sites. I work. My day job is at a DFS proper site offering contests, which is why I'm not allowed to play anymore. And there are really good reasons to have a paywall and not have a paywall. To have a paywall is pretty simple. If you have some good, valuable content, let's go with the hypothetical that I'm the only person doing decent NBA preseason content, that would be valuable. You could get people to spend $1 a day on that. Well, making money is the end game. But in theory, doing this, or doing those shows for free and having those shows get, you know, my first year touting, we were up to like 5,000 views at sometimes because we were the best show in the business and a million people were flooding in to see us talk about basketball. Well, that builds the brand and keeps the lights on long term. So, yo, what's up? But, so yeah, I mean, and those are the key points. There are other little nuances, but as always, minutes is money in basketball. Basketball is most notable from the other sports, and it's the hardest sport to cash because it's the easiest sport to play in cash because minutes combined with, again, the low scoring value of occurrences and the massive number of occurrences makes it a much more statistically regulatable and trackable phenomenon. Baseball game, guy gets 5 at-bats. You know, Mike Trout gets 0 points 2 times a week. It's just really small sample size. It gets 5 at-bats. Basketball game, guy's going to take, depending on who it is, 15, 25 shots, have 17 chances at a rebound, and get between 5 and 11 of them, some assists. His range of potential outcomes is much, much more narrow. So let's see. Other things we can talk about preseason strategy. So, one, play. I think that was... you know, pretty important to bring up. Play a lot. It's your pitcher currently has -13. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are just about done. Football tomorrow. The clock, we're turning on to the next section of the year. So football tomorrow and football proper on Sunday. I miss firing up the red zone with 5 figures in play and just sitting back and watching football Sundays during the NFL season. It is a sublime pleasure. But, you know, that's where that is. I do think it is worth, Ed the Soul Stealer said he got free fan bites. Well, you tell the Soul Stealer I'm coming to Chicago next Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have a get-together. Hopefully at least a half dozen of us do sort of a bar games pentathlon. So I'll send out the bat signal on Twitter recently. If it's okay with Matt Draven Knight, who I suspect lives in Gotham. Do you recommend playing DFS when there is less information? Yeah, absolutely. It's you want your opponents to be less knowledgeable. It's one of the interesting metrics when you're talking about DFS, because the further you go off the beaten path, both generally the less fish from the public tend to be there, but the less super touts and information tends to be out there. And those, you know, I think largely parallel each other, which is why you don't find a lot of I cash 91% of my games in League of Legends, but I can't win in football. I think those roughly parallel each other, and those are the contrasting sort of metrics that change as something becomes a little more off the beaten path. So, but certainly, you know, perfect information changes things, and it doesn't just make it harder, it makes it different to the extent of how you play tournaments. Like, there are times in the preseason where the best play is like 5% owned. It happened several times last year where I'd be like, this is the best guy to play tonight. And he'd play and he'd smash. And it seemed obvious to me. And he was 4.4% owned. 4.2 of which were people who were watching that show. And it's just like, oh, yeah. That really doesn't happen much in the regular season. There's just too many goddamn people looking at it. Eddie blocked those clowns. I don't know who I'm supposed to block. But if someone's talking junk, that's fine. I muted someone on Twitter today. That's like 3 ever. But Soul Stealer says he owns you in foosball. That is correct. When you asked him about other bar games, he was silent. That was also correct of him. And see, don't lie when you can't back it up. but he dominated me at he dominated foosball. The great Evan Silva, not to be underestimated, ran the ping pong table. I was the cornhole and golf master. We didn't get to the darts, but we're going 3 hours this time. I'm renting out the pod, so we will get that done, and I will attempt to here on the personal live Periscope, maybe televise, so to speak, some of that content. Carnage was here for a second. Nerd alert right at the beginning. Love Carnage. So that will be fun. So sure, any other questions? Any other process questions? Anything else? But yeah, big tips. One, research going directly to beat reporters, not trying to go to aggregator sites, because at least as of last year, there wasn't a good one. And if you followed some good like TweetDeck lists of beat reporters, it was key. Two, coaches. Again, I'll try to break all that shit down over the next week so you can just take notes on those free shows if you don't want to go back to them. This year's Ty Wallace. I don't even know where to start with that. Like, I remember a ton from last year's preseason, but there's probably even more I have to refresh myself with. So I got another, what do I do for work? Yeah, that's a good point. I'll bring those up on the show. I'll actually probably curate my own list and pass it out on a show. But I will probably make my own list. Other touts play, why don't you? I can play while working at Awesemo or working at FanVice or working at Roto Grinders, all three content sites I've worked for. I couldn't play because I previously worked for FantasyFeud.com, which eventually got sold and then closed for 4.5 years. And I now work for GDFSI.com, which is a European DFS site, currently doing only soccer and golf, but that's not a good enough reason to let them play again. So you can't play at FanDuel or DraftKings if you play on FanDuel or DraftKings or on any other DFS site. Where will you be? I live in Forest Park on the outskirts. Evan came to our library. Oh, that's right. I heard about Evan doing the library trip. We are going to be at a place called, I believe, Play 18. It is in the city proper on Wabash. Can't believe I remember that, but I'm pretty sure that's where it's located. But play18.com. I think I'll bring it up for you. So that's where we're going to all get together. And I will tweet about it soon and respond to that quasi-RSVP. And we'll set that up. Also, you need a Philly trip since I couldn't come last time. I would like to go to Philly. I have talked to a lot of people out there. Met Tyreek, who... that's not you, Tyreek. Again, the phone issue is small. But, yeah, see if you can make the Chicago trip. I'll do... probably going to do Philly and Florida at some point in the next 6 months. And nothing I like to do more than sit down with people and talk some DFS. But any other questions before we back it out for the day? DeRozan is on the Spurs. Yes, Ricky. New coach, though. But yeah, that's my point. So now we've brought Dwayne Casey from Toronto to Detroit. And he was in Toronto for all those years, and nobody got any goddamn minutes. Whereas Stan Van Gundy was in Detroit, giving everybody their 30-plus minutes. So, you know, now I think you're going to see those minutes decline a ton versus last year. Some of those players are gone. Tobias Harris is gone. But when am I coming to Denver? I don't know. Whenever CSU Rams invites me. I got a lot of friends in Denver. There's actually a game development studio, I believe it's out there, Direwolf Digital, which some of the people I worked with at Blizzard briefly and Upper Deck Entertainment back when I worked in game design for about a decade. A lot of those guys ended up in Denver. And then, but yeah, I want to go out there. You guys are great. You're all out there playing golf and basketball 24/7, so I'd love to go out and try to do that for a week. Denver, no, Nashville, yes, there are a few old grinders around there. You guys, if you're in Nashville, you have plenty of DFS touts more interesting than me walking around. You guys are littered with DFS touts. Thoughts on the Lakers? Did he do it for his business or to actually win? More for his business than to actually win. You can't convince me. LeBron. I know a lot about basketball, and I don't think I know dick compared to LeBron James. That guy is incredibly, incredibly smart, and I think 6 steps ahead of almost anyone else playing this game. And I still don't think you could convince me he said, I want to win, I'm going to the Lakers. I think he'd love to win with the Lakers. I don't think he thinks he's fucked going to play with the Lakers. But I don't think he was like, yes, this is my best. There were plenty of places he could go if he wanted to win this year, next year, the year after that. But it's LA. It's, you know, it's the Lakers. Like, it's prestige business winning. Like, part of it is just like, yeah, and he went west. Like, leaving the conference is idiotic. Like, it's insane. 9 of the best 10 teams in the NBA are in the West, almost. 8. There's really 8 of the best teams in the NBA are in the West. He already made a movie. He made Trainwreck, and then he has his Unscripted, I think is his series, and then the barbershop thing, and he's making another movie, and Reuben Carter, and the whole guy. Like he's yeah. But going west was not a winning move, which you almost admire. Kyrie Irving was the only person who ever made a move for not money and not to win, which was really rare. He made a move randomly for ego. Like he was in the East and with LeBron, who had at the time he demanded a trade made 6 or 7 consecutive finals, and Kyrie demanded a trade and got traded to Boston, guaranteeing he would get less money and a shorter term than he could get with Cleveland, and that it was probably less likely still he would win a title. So, yeah, that was a weird one. And he didn't even demand it, but it was very weird that Kyrie Irving he demanded a trade at a time in which it was not going to profit him in either of the ways in which it was very rare to see someone who wasn't going for money or going to win. About 90% of the time they go for money. Occasionally get the David Wests of the world. Long may he ride. People ask me a lot about, Golden State. How will this guy be this year? How will this... You can put just about anyone behind those 4 guys and they're going to do fine. Like the various bench pieces they've made work, there aren't really many NBA players that are more different than like Nick Young and Sean Livingston and JaVale McGee and David West, and they're all very, very effective in that system because you just surround them with such a massive talent that at a certain point, and they're really well coached, so it's people are always like, oh, what do you think? How do you think this guy is going to be out in Golden State? It's like he's going to be fine. When all your shots are open, it helps. Is Boogie going to be ready for the start of the season? I doubt it, looking at him. I mean, I can still tell looking at him he's not close. And regular season is, I think, October 16 is the date on that one. So I'd be shocked if he was ready regular season. I mean, he's noticeably hobbled. He runs about as well as I do right now. Now he's going to continue to get better because he's young and receiving world-class treatment and is an elite athlete. And I'm a feeble, old, doddering fool. But I would be shocked to see. I would give you 20-1 against Boogie playing on opening night. Yeah, he's just slowed down. Thoughts on Zion from Duke? I hate Duke. As a beast. Like there's a few guys in that 17 to 20-year-old range right now who look like they've been taking their amino acids and taking their HGH and everything for a few years now. Some of these guys are built. It's just terrifying to watch the game. I can't imagine some of these guys bearing down on me. Yeah, there's some massive beastly dudes coming up. You never know if they'll pick up the skills or if they'll just turn into the next, Maurice Chris and etc. But I could not take Zion one-on-one. I couldn't survive Zion one-on-one. I've only played basketball twice now in the last 14 months. I've played tennis like 12 times, which is embarrassing because I'm a basketball guy, but jumping and landing really hurts. Lost a lot of weight, which was good. That makes basketball a little more possible. But was going to play on the Chicago trip, but it got called out. One of the guys I was going to play with, Tom, had hurt his back a little bit. So I don't think we're going to do the basketball game this Chicago trip, but that was the original plan. I'm there 2 nights this coming Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday is going to be Play 18. Monday was going to be meet at an indoor gym and hoop it up. But apparently not going to happen this trip. Maybe a couple months. How long have I been on? 33 minutes and 42 seconds as of right now. But again, this is simulcasting on the YouTube. Usually get, a couple hundred people, maybe 50 at a time, 100 at a time on the Periscope. We're at 50 right now. The YouTube gets another 300 or 400 viewers, but it is saved on the awesemo.com YouTube channel. Do I agree with Stephen A. that Clay is the best supplemental player to LeBron James? No, I would argue that Steph is the best supplemental player to LeBron James on, well, I guess a player, both ends of the court. Yeah, I guess so. Like, with LeBron, you want guys who can shoot, and you have Clay and Steph, so you're kind of doing that, and you have Durant. So, like, if you're saying which of those guys do I take first, I'll take Kevin Durant, then I'll take Steph Curry, then I'll take Klay Thompson. But I don't think I can take Klay over Durant. Like, there's less positional rubbery, but they're so open and moving with the ball. I'm still taking Kevin Durant. Klay fits extremely well with LeBron. He plays solid defense, covers his man very well, doesn't break down a lot. How long are you going to stay on? I love hearing you talk. For some reason, so calming. Probably not that much longer. That's a little creepy, but I'm just going to look at it as a straight compliment. But I'm going to do, I think, a personal Periscope tomorrow because people have asked for a random nutrition one, people have asked for a politics one, people have asked for... And I'm going to start knocking those out, and I got to do it before basketball. So I'm going to keep doing every other day with the somewhat relevant shit, and I'll start doing the team breakdowns for NBA, which I think is really important to get through. Redick staying in Philly with a pay cut is nice. Yeah, he got... I mean, and a lot of it just had to do with the market last year versus the market this year. And, yes, Harold, I am still in Ohio. You know, last year was just a much better market for a couple positions. Center being one of them, which you saw with Boogie's contract, a number of the other center contracts coming in really under value. And guys of J.J. Redick's ilk just did not get paid as much this year. So J.J. got I don't want to say 30-40% pay cut. I don't remember the number offhand. But, yeah, they love him there. They love him in the locker room. And him on the offensive end of the court alongside Ben Simmons is not dissimilar from when we were just referring to Clay alongside LeBron James. Like, you just have guys who require respect or they will score in the lane every single time and they get a collapse and you put enough three-point shooters out there and it's just unfair. So I think if I'm picking Warriors, I still go Durant, then Clay, then... I'm sorry, Durant, then Curry, then Clay, just because of their massive value on the other end of the court. You believe the NBA will catch up with Ben Simmons? It happened in the playoffs. A lot of people like to hate on Ben Simmons. And don't get me wrong, there's his shot is a little jacked. It's not Markelle Fultz jacked, but, you know, he did not make a three-pointer. That's not ideal for a guard in the 2018-2019 National Basketball Association. That's a reasonable concern. But he does still seem to get a really significant amount of detraction for a team that did extremely well, for someone who came out and had a great year. Like, just seemed to, there's players people love to hate. An easy one is Draymond. Now everyone knows why people love to hate Draymond. Well, there's a few reasons. One is, if you look at the pictures, he's got a larger penis than many of us. But also the fact that he's obviously very eccentric and he's kicking people in the hay now, and he's a guy who you are going to look at sideways. I love having Fultz there if I'm done. Like, he's another guy who has a massive ceiling as a player, and they're deep enough now. They don't need to push my man at all. Like, I hope he has not been psychologically damaged by the process of the world making fun of his shot. I don't know. I want to go back into that someday and figure out who is more to blame, Markelle Fultz or the 76ers. Because, like, that got fucked up somehow. I don't know, like... Guy gets drafted in the lottery at the top, goes in, decides, I think, like, without consulting the team to change his shot, who then don't handle it that well, and it's just like, I don't know what's going on there, but it was not done well. And where it's just a natural, like, watch, Markel's going to shoot a free throw, and you're like, oh no, that's like a car accident watching the guy shoot for a little while there, so, Ben Simmons got locked down by Boston because they have a super versatile lineup. Two other teams have that. Several other teams have that. Players like Draymond remind me of the 90s player. Yeah, there's a certain, you know, I can't shoot, but I have elbows, and I'd like you to meet them aspect to Draymond there. We'll love going to Timberwolves mode this year. I think he might. I don't expect, you know, Sexton to be able to do everything he's going to want to do at this point. You know, I don't know if you get back to that Timberwolves mode, but I'll put the over-under on Kevin Love 2020 games this year at 2.5. Like, I think you may get some really stupid Kevin Love games. He's a guy definitely at the beginning of the year that I don't, you know, people are going to be used to the last X years of Cleveland Kevin Love, and maybe they limit him enough in the preseason that, you know, he doesn't, you know, the secret doesn't get out that much and has a decent matchup opening day. That's one of those guys I can see windmilling 100% in GPPs. Season-long fantasy targets for NBA. I thought you were going to ask for football, and I'm like, everyone says Christian McCaffrey, and after that amount. I really need to look into it more. I have 2 leagues myself, but again, I've got, you know, a month until either of them draft. So it's always, you're talking about value. There was an interesting kerfuffle on Twitter the other day where two of my long distance, but people whose tweets I enjoy and whom I think I have mutual respectful friendships with, The Siege and Tommy G were having a colloquy, if you will, a conversation. And in the midst of it, so Siege had drafted Jerick McKinnon in a league, and Tommy G said he wasn't even on my board. He was untakeable to me, which has the unique quality of being both completely correct in this situation and, in my opinion, completely stupid. It's fine if there's a guy lower down the card who just isn't on your board. If you're just like, people are thinking Mike Wallace maybe gets it all together this year, I don't want any, that's fine. You don't need any of him at any price. That's fine. But you can't be like, I'm just worried all the injuries are going to catch up with Gronk. He's not on my board. You can't do that. There has to be a point at which you have slotted Gronk like, okay, I'm taking Gronk. If Gronk is there at pick 21, I'm taking Gronk. So Jerick McKinnon was in that class. He was ranked running back, I don't even know, fairly high at this point. If you didn't want to have him at running back, I think he was like 12? I think it was high double digits. We'll go 10 or 12. If you want to have him at running back 20, that's fine. But he should be on your board at running back 20. So I guess this is just all a story about, like off the board, it's all about value. So when you say, who do you like in NBA season long? Well, I like 50 players for the year, but until I can tell where they're getting drafted, it's hard to say, like, I really like this guy. Like, I like Kevin Durant. He's probably the second or third best overall pick, maybe fourth. If I can get him 8th, I think he's brilliant. If I have to pick him first or second, I'll probably go somewhere else. So that's enough. Yes, I'm still in Ohio. So yeah, that's, but Philly, I don't think they're ready yet to win it all. I don't think people understand how good, who would I take at number 1? I think I still take Giannis. I think LeBron's minutes will come down, which pulls him out of conversation. It has something to do with the league. Am I paying for turnovers? If I'm whatever, it's going to be really hard to go wrong with Antetokounmpo, though. I don't know. There's a few guys you can put in there. You won your last league last year, so you get first overall pick this year. I think you should get, if you won last year, in my opinion, you should get to pick your spot. So you should be able to say, in my opinion, I want to pick 5th or something like that. You think Philly's being smart, waiting for Clay? Yeah, I mean, that Warriors team at some point has to get broken up. Durant one isn't. It's like Durant has not disappointed. I remember once I picked Serge Ibaka 5th overall in a basketball league, and that was the year he decided to stop being amazing. Serge Ibaka used to be like the best guy in the league at blocks, top 8 in rebounds, picked up a few other peripheral stats, and in the right types of leagues was a monster a couple of years in a row. Yeah, then he stopped being a monster. So that was a sad moment. I just remember stretching for Serge at one point, and him not rewarding me for that stretch. But I don't think people really understand how good this Warriors team is. Like, this is obviously redundant, and almost all of you know this, but they won 73 games, which was the most in the history of the league, and then added Kevin Durant. That's really fucking dumb. Now, they sacrificed a little bit to get it. Their bench value, went from being a slightly above average bench in the NBA to being a slightly below average bench in the NBA, but you don't understand. Like, I watched Jordan play live a few times. I've watched a whole lot of basketball. I've been to the Garden. I've watched NBA games in, I want to say, 20 or 21 arenas in this country. These Warriors are that dumb. Like, it's really that dumb. You can hope for Steph injury. The other 3 guys, I don't think it's very likely. You can hope Cousins doesn't come around. But, like, if they get back a 90% Cousins, wave it. I would literally sit here for quite some time thinking about them versus the rest of the NBA. I think the rest of the NBA gets it. But I have to think about it for a little while. Like, do they get to train? Do they get a month? You know what I'm saying? If you give me the rest of the NBA and they get a month to get together, I'll take the rest of the NBA. You give me the rest of the NBA, which is a preposterous statement. If you give me the other 29 teams, and just like right now, pick your team. They don't get any practice. They get to play with each other. I think I'd take Golden State. Which is ridiculous. Oh, I'm not saying they won't win if they only get back a 60% DeMarcus Cousins. I'm fairly certain they're my favorite if they get back a 0% DeMarcus Cousins. I like Houston still. I picked Houston to win that series last year. Hard, straight through the year. Houston was very, very well built to deal with Golden State. And their back office is fucking brilliant, and history, and they know, they built a brilliant team to be able to beat them. And injuries, and Chris Paul, and Mamute never being right, and a couple other things. And the Warriors were dealing with some injuries as well, but that very nearly happened. And I don't like their team as much to do it this year. And, I do think you will get back, the CP3 hammy and the, I want to say 27 consecutively missed three-pointers, starting when they were up a dozen in the closeout game. Which, again, just a freak occurrence. Watching that, I remember just watching that being like, and the announcers start talking about it, they've missed their last 18 three-pointers, and I'm like, I picked a hell of a time to set the longest streak in NBA history for consecutive missed three-pointers in the playoffs. I wanted them to win, for the fact that I had said they're going to win 20 times and went out on a limb. I said bet them straight up to win. You were getting really good odds to just bet them straight out. Clyde Frazier comments on Kevin Durant. I don't specifically recall that. I think it was just he gave him, I can't treat you as a true legend, superstar or something because you made that move. I think it was more or less what he said, if you can confirm for me that I'm getting the basic context there. Is math the best way to get to the top 10% of DFS or something else? Well, that's a very complicated question. Again, you don't need a degree in theoretical physics, unlike our friend who claimed he could win 91% of his contests over a season today and doesn't even know how to lie correctly. You do need to have a sense of math. Math is really cool to me. I've always enjoyed math because it just sort of builds on itself, and as long as you keep sort of understanding it and going up the trend, it just makes sense. So even if you're in your head, you can't do, 91 squared is 8,281. I used to be able to square all the numbers up to like a couple hundred in my head. It's been a while. I could try that. But anyhow, even if you're not like math guy, you can still just, if you get math, if you like, poker's a better example. If you play poker and, he said his name will have asterisks next to it in the record books. I mean, that's a hard take. I respect his right to have that opinion because, he did a lot of it the hard way, and so I'll handle that, and I'll go back to the math question. Your name will have an asterisk in the record books. That's coming after somebody's legacy. How many digits can I take pi to? I'm sure on 5 digits after that I get shaky. 3.14159. That's like 2738. I lose it after that, but that's a great question. I feel bad that I only had that many digits. And I'm going to study that up, and I want you to hit me again. Once we get to the regular season, I need some time to train. But, yeah. Boogie's move doesn't bother me at all. I'll go get my ring and then go back on the free market in a little bit when, I can get $20 million a year next year. This is a 1-year stop, grab myself a ring. That guy deserves it. He sweated away, and even if you don't like him, he put in his time, and Sacramento is not a fun place to be a basketball player. So, the comments that your records, your rings will have an asterisk next to them, that's tough shit, but that move is unprecedented. He literally went to the team that had just acquired the best record in the history of the NBA, and he was in the top, I'll stretch it out to 4 players in the league at the time he did it. That's pretty busted. I mean, you don't have teams with, 20 collective All-Star nominations, or I mean, it's yeah, I don't even know what to add beyond that. So I would love to say, it's not a simple situation. I don't know what to tell you. He still has to go out there, train, play at an elite level, and get it, and nobody's gonna fucking give it to you. And whether it's the Cavs or the Sixers, or, well, not the Cavs this year, but the Sixers or the the Celtics or the Bucks or whoever the hell manages to get through there, they're not going to just give it to him. They're going to have to earn it. So I would feel bad diminishing his accomplishments because to the largest extent, he has earned them. He has put in the time. He's a phenomenal basketball player, and he deserves respect. But at the same time, yeah, my guy took a shortcut. You know, I will have more respect for someone who is a lifelong public servant and becomes president of the United States than, say, someone who does other things of less value to the general harmony and community. Cavs to the Eastern Conference Final, and then again by the porn bot. No. So the second question was the math thing. So look, you have to understand math. And what I mean by that is there are poker players who are brilliant, perfect, know all the math where they're going to get their card and they're going to look at the turn in the river and they're going to look at their hand and the guy's going to bet 30,000 and they're going to look and say, I have 130,000 in front of me and he's got 85,000 behind and I can check or I can fold or I can all in. And if I all in, I need to have this chance to win. I need to have 58.92% chance of winning to make this the correct play, and I have a 63% chance of winning, assuming he's got only the ace or worse than that. And then there's that guy, and there's just guys who just have a generally good sense of math. Same thing with DFS. You need to have a generally good sense of math. Like, you should be able to look at a guy, like, if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I want to get a ratio of 4.5x, and he costs 3,700. Let me plug that in my calculator there, and that means I need to get 16.8 points out of it. Yeah, then you're not good enough at math. You should look at him and be like, oh, that much. I need about that much out of him. You should be able to feel it, but you don't need to be, you know, a theoretical mathematician to do well at DFS. Past a good junior and high school level, I don't think it's doing a whole hell of a lot for you. Robert Parrish said the same. It's hard to win regardless of what he did. And yeah, you're a Trump supporter? That's fine. There are reasons. Being a Trump supporter is fine. Being a unrepentant 100% of the time, with no exception, Trump supporter is unacceptable. He's done some things that are bad. Good Americans should be able to say, I still support Donald Trump. I voted for him. He was the right choice. But, you know, I have an issue with him attacking the media. Attacking the media is dangerous. Attacking the media is the kind of thing dictators and fascists do. Like, that's Mussolini-style stuff. That's not okay. The media is essential in having an open government. You can't call them the enemy of the people and stuff like that. So, like, that's not cool, and I don't want to go down this. That'll be a personal Periscope in a couple days. I'll probably go into some of this stuff. But I can totally respect someone who voted for Trump. I can totally respect some I would not have, and I did not, simply because he wasn't qualified. I totally understand other people's things. I don't want to vote for Hillary. There's lots of good reasons to vote for Trump. For me, the biggest problem is the fact that he just wasn't qualified to do the job. There was no reason to suggest he had the temperament or skill set to do it, and I think that's been borne out. But there were reasons to do it, so if you voted for Trump, I can see doing that and being a reasonable person. And if you supported him or support him, I can see doing that and being a reasonable person. If you can't say, there's 4 or 5 things that are unacceptable, that you have to be able to go, oh, okay, just as an American, that's too much, Donnie. You gotta be there. There are people who support every single thing he does, and you're lost. Like, you've drank the Kool-Aid. That's fine. You have to be able to criticize your own side a little bit. Anyhow, so don't know how we got there, but yeah, you can't be blind. There's a code of civic responsibility. You have to occasionally be able to criticize your own guys. And again, this is a longer pod. We'll do down wherever, and we just lost 20 followers by talking about this for 1 minute. Literally 40% of the people checked out because we talked about politics for 1 minute. Can we not talk about Trump? They are the ones who are... All right, I will shut up on that topic for the purpose of this Periscope. I will give it its own forum when it's appropriate, and I try to respect everybody. I will say this. The most damaging thing that people do that I absolutely think is wrong, and everyone does it on one side or the other, or way too many people do it, is they all do this or they all do this. I cannot stand the broad paintbrushing of political factions. Every time one of my friends, many of whom are liberal, say, every Trump voter is a racist, I want to throttle them. It drives me crazy. I have thousands of friends who voted for Trump. Good people, who in my opinion made a mistake, but good people. And the demonization of the left by the right and the right by the left drives me insane. You need to be able to differ with each other without threatening each other. Absolutely, it's incredibly destructive. But yeah, we'll talk about it some other time. But yeah, the greater good is to but we'll do a long talk on that. So any further basketball questions before I skedaddle for the evening? Probably going to do personal scope. I agree with you politically. Can we talk basketball? Yeah. Give me some questions. Get me out of here. Golden State can expand the current window because guys like Boogie and vets who want a title will sign for cheap. Yeah, what's interesting is this is a really unique instance in almost professional sports, but sort of in history, where you have a fairly tight salary cap, which is itself a phenomenal, like, 2-hour show talking about how that affects things. Because LeBron James is worth 5 to 10 times his salary. He's worth $200 million a year or something to the Lakers. Some absolutely obscene number that he gets paid a fraction of, which I don't know how fair that is, really. But we're in a very unique situation in the history of the NBA where you have, you know, guys can sort of sign up for a chip, like really sign up for a chip. Like David West is like, well, I can get $12 million or I can get 2, but I got like a 90% chance of getting a ring, or 70% chance of getting a ring, but some very good number. How much do you stack? Take stacking as a viable option, including total and pace. Okay, that's a good question. This is sort of basketball in general more than preseason. I will post a schedule. I'll try to give at least 24 hours notice on each of those shows. But I would presume that I will do the first team show either this Friday or Sunday. I'll either do one more sort of process something else show Friday and then start the teams on Sunday. Or just start on Friday. And roughly every other day after that. But I will try to schedule it out in the future if I can. But if not, again, they're all saved on YouTube. So they're free on YouTube. So you can watch them whenever the hell you get a second. Or, yeah, notifications. So, stacking. Stacking is, in my opinion, almost neutral in basketball DFS. It adds variance, but not value, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is if you stack 5 guys in a game or 3 guys on a team, you've added an upside and a downside. Unlike baseball, where there's some very obvious reasons to do some stacking, where when one guy gets on base and another guy hits him in, hey, they both get points. That's pretty obvious. There's much less of that in basketball. You can get, you know, you have one great shooter on a team and one great assist guy on a team. That's as close as you get to some really, really nice synergy. The other synergy sort of comes indirectly through lots of, you know, you randomly pick up a double overtime, or just the game blows out, or someone else on the team gets hurt, and so everyone else on the team gets advantaged, including the 2 guys you picked. But I will say the 2 important notes on stacking I have would be this. 1, over-unders are a little bit overrated. And what I mean by that is, let's assume one game is the slow game of the night and has an over-under of 200. And the other game is the fast game of the night and has the over-under of 220. That's a 9% difference. I believe it's, right? It's 1/11th. It's 9.09% difference between those 2 things, which means in a vacuum, if a guy was going to score you 20 points, he's going to score you 21.8 points. If he was going to score you 30, he's going to get you 32.7, all else being equal in a vacuum. That is significant, but not the end of the, like, some people are just like, I'm just playing everyone in the fast games, and I think that is done more than it should be, relative to less than it should be. It's not like more people jump on that this game is super fast, I'm blah, 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 and leave off a guy who, like, okay, you have a Golden State Houston game going off at 2:34 or something, and people are like, I want guys in that game, and you should, but not at the expense of a perfectly good guy in a game with an over-under of 217. So my first thing would be, I think over-unders are just mentally sort of overweighted by people. They're significant, and 9% ain't nothing, but that's, you know, a big difference between a really slow game and a really fast game. I think that gets overdone a little bit. And the second thing is, and this is the more important one, is that stacking is a much more viable strategy in the cases that there are few games on the slate, because your advantage and likelihood of hitting it are increased and your disadvantage are decreased. If there's 3 games on the slate and you stack one of them, your advantages are all the same stacking advantages. This game goes off, this game gets 5 overtimes, someone else gets hurt in this game, just something happens in this game making it exceptional. And your disadvantages are far less, which is I'm not taking players from 2 games instead of taking players from 14 games. So, and the odds that this game is exceptional are higher, because it's only got to be exceptional relative to 2, rather than exceptional relative to 15 or 14. So, stacking's fine. But it's better when there's, like, stacking on, like, 12 or 14 game slates, I think is almost always wrong. And I think were some any significant research into this to be done, that would be borne out to be the case. But stacking on like a 5-game slate, yeah. You know, and I almost, believe it or not, would almost rather, it's going to depend, but stack the second highest over-under game than the highest over-under game. Just because of the ownership. If you have 5 games and they have over-unders of 200, 205, 210, 215, and 220, everyone's going to stack the 220. Let's stack 215. It's going to go over the 220 47% of the time, 46% of the time, and it's going to be half owned as a stack. So, Houston has some GPP winning stacks. I'm absolutely sure they did. I mean, they were not as you know, quite as pacey as they had been in the past, and their defense wasn't as bad either. I mean, they were much different last year versus 2 years ago when they were just track racing every damn game. But yeah, that would be my my couple useful comments there on the stacks. And we'll end it at that. We've been going for an hour. Probably back tomorrow on the personal Periscope. That's you, not you. But, yeah. Follow me on Twitter. Buy my candygrams. All that good stuff. In Chicago next Monday and Tuesday. Probably on the personal Periscope tomorrow. And back doing something else for DFS on the YouTube. Who's the second fantasy option on the Lakers? I don't know what they're going to do at point yet. I don't know what they're going to do at the... That's an oddly good question. I don't know. I wish they'd have kept Randall. That's a good question. I'm going to study that one up too. Send me a tweet and remind me. I'm really curious just what they're going to do with their lineup. Like, I'm really not sure who's going to play. I don't want to say Brandon Ingram, but it might be Brandon Ingram at this point. It's going to be really interesting. Good question. All right, so I am back tomorrow. My pleasure as always, my friends. Take care. Be square. We are out of here.